place for quick summaries of movies with jaw-dropping twists. Let's dive in. The story of our movie is about a little boy who was with his family on an adventure in the forest. But an accident happened that wiped out the family. The little boy was left alone in the forest. Unfortunately, no one knew his location. How could a child his age survive in the forest? Let's see if this little boy can make it. The story begins at the port. A family named Pete's family goes camping in the forest with their 2-year-old son, Pete. The family consisted of a father, a mother, and the little boy. They were happy as they embarked on this adventure. Pete had a book he loved about a dog named Elliot in the forest, and he was reading it. The father and mother were focused on him, with the father driving and explaining to his son what an adventure means. He told him that they were currently on an adventure too, and encouraged him to be brave. Suddenly, without warning, a deer appeared in front of their car. Unfortunately, the father lost control of the vehicle, and it overturned. The father and mother died, leaving Pete looking at them, not understanding what had happened, but he cried when he found himself alone. He stayed for a while beside his parents, thinking they were asleep and would wake up, but none of them woke up. Pete began to fear the sounds of wolves filling the forest as night fell. He decided to run into the forest. Suddenly, he encountered a green dragon that was initially hidden, but then appeared to Pete. Pete asked if it would eat him, but the dragon didn't respond. Instead, it extended its hand. When Pete touched it, the dragon's color turned to a lighter green, a sign that the dragon liked him. The dragon sat beside Pete, then carried him and took him to its lair. 6 years passed since the incident. We see an old lumberjack named Sam telling children about a green dragon he saw when he was young. He said he was about to kill it, but the dragon breathed fire and attacked him, and he miraculously survived. We see his daughter Grace telling the children that this story is a lie, and that no one should believe in dragons because she has been in the forest for 20 years and has never seen one. We learn that Grace works in environmental protection and loves the forest so much that she spends most of her time there. She loves all animals and knows them well, but her father tells her that just because she hasn't seen a dragon doesn't mean it doesn't exist. She replies that a story isn't enough proof of a dragon's existence. She tells them she's heading to the forest and will let them know if she sees a dragon or not. However, Sam is confident that he saw it. He explains that the dragon can disappear and only shows itself to those it chooses. He tells the children that if they believe in things, they will see them. In the forest, we see Pete chasing a rabbit. Pete, now 8 years old, has grown but isn't aware of reality like ordinary humans. Pete catches the rabbit and plays with it, but he's startled by a wolf standing behind him, growling to scare him. But the bear doesn't move, and Elliot, the dragon, appears behind Pete. Pete had named the dragon after the dog in his story. The bear runs away as soon as it sees Elliot. Pete thinks the wolf was scared of him and feels happy. But when he realizes Elliot was behind him, he understands what happened and laughs. Pete asks Elliot to take him to the river. They run through the forest and reach the river, playing in the water. It's clear that Pete is happy and that Elliot has been raising and protecting him all this time. Elliot decides to play hide-and-seek with Pete, using his power of invisibility, but Pete manages to find him, and they continue playing. Pete climbs onto Elliot's back, and the dragon flies high into the sky. Pete is overjoyed, and it seems this isn't the first time he's flown with Elliot. Elliot takes Pete back to the cave where they sleep. They sit and gaze at the stars. Elliot knows the stars well because his family was once in the forest, just like Pete. The next day, Pete and Elliot are playing in the forest as usual, but they are surprised to see Grace in the forest. Elliot quickly uses his invisibility power, while Pete follows her unnoticed. He sees her marking trees with red paint to stop them from being cut down. Pete observes her and notices she's holding a compass. When she moves to another tree, Pete runs and takes the compass without her noticing. Grace senses movement, but doesn't see anyone. Her colleague calls her to leave. Before leaving, she goes to the bulldozers cutting the trees and throws their keys into the forest to get rid of them. Her colleague, who is also her fiancé, Jack, is surprised she's sabotaging the work because the project belongs to him. But she explains that her brother Gavin is responsible for the illegal logging and doesn't follow Jack's guidelines. That's why she's opposing Gavin's work, as he only cares about money. We learn that Grace and Jack are getting married at the end of the month. After they leave, Pete and Elliot see what's happening and are puzzled by the machines. Elliot climbs onto one of the bulldozers and accidentally destroys it. They return to the cave, where Pete admires the compass and the picture inside it. He then goes back to his place and sleeps in Elliot's arms, telling him a story from his childhood that taught him how to read. Both of them finally fall asleep. Hours later, a new day begins, and Pete wakes up to the sound of trees being cut and bulldozers at work. He tries to wake Elliot to go see what's happening, but Elliot is in a deep sleep. Pete decides to go alone to investigate. Pete watches as Gavin, Jack's brother, cuts down trees. Jack and Grace confront Gavin, arguing that his actions are wrong and that venturing further into the forest is dangerous. They warn him that his actions will leave no trees to cut in the future, but Gavin only cares about the money and the profits the timber will bring to their factory. Grace and Jack argue with Gavin to stop his intrusion into the forest. Jack's daughter, Natalie, from his first marriage, reminds him she's late for school. She gets out of the car and sees Pete from a distance. When Pete runs into the forest, Natalie follows him. Pete keeps running and hides behind a tree, but Natalie continues to search for him. She finally spots him up in a tree and tries to talk to him, but he hides. She decides to climb the tree, but as she reaches the branch, it breaks and she falls. Luckily, Pete grabs her hand just before she hits the ground. She begs him not to let go. She screams for help, and her cries alert the adults, who run toward the sound. Pete, unable to hold her weight any longer, lets go and she falls. Fortunately, the ground is close, and she only gets a minor injury. Natalie has an injury in her legs, and Pete goes to check on her. Natalie meets him and he tells her his name, but he is puzzled by her and her attire. He takes her to her family, who are relieved to see her. Her father asks what led her into the forest, and she points toward Pete's house, saying she followed him. They are surprised to find Pete living alone and try to talk to him, but he is scared. Grace notices the onion-like object around his neck and realizes he took it from her, and it wasn't lost. Pete, out of fear, climbs a tree again, but Gavin runs after him and grabs him by the leg. Unfortunately, the tree branch breaks, causing Pete to fall and hit his head on the ground, rendering him unconscious. Meanwhile, Elliot finally wakes up and starts looking for Pete, thinking he is playing hide-and-seek as usual. He searches everywhere but can't find him and keeps calling out for him. Gavin hears the sound and asks his brother if he heard anything strange. His brother denies it and dismisses the sounds as an excuse for Gavin to enter the forest. Jack leaves to check on Pete, who was taken to the hospital, while Elliot watches them from afar and realizes they are the ones who took Jack. Gavin decides to continue his work, but Elliot accidentally knocks over a tree because it couldn't bear his weight. No one sees him, but as he tries to escape, he topples a few more trees, which Gavin and the workers notice. Gavin instructs them to prepare for a hunt, and they ready their guns and head into the forest. At the hospital, Pete regains consciousness, but doesn't recognize where he is. Grace observes him from behind the door and contacts social services to find out if he has been missing for a long time. She confirms that he is indeed lost, as his health condition is very poor, and he has significant vitamin deficiencies. Natalie arrives to check on him and learns that the child escaped. Pete is seen running in the streets, not knowing where to go. Eventually, he reaches the forest and Elliot. He jumps onto cars, startling people, and even attacks a dog on the street, causing fear among the onlookers. He keeps running with the police chasing after him until he reaches a dead-end street. Grace arrives and calms him down, assuring him that she won't hurt him. She manages to catch him, but he screams loudly, almost as if calling out to someone in the forest. By then, Gavin and his men had reached large footprints, confirming it wasn't a bear, as no bear is that size. Since they were venturing deeper into the forest than ever before, they were uncertain about what they might encounter. Grace decides to take Pete home with her and return him to social services the next day. She takes him to her house in her car, and Pete is bewildered by everything around him. When they arrive at her home, Pete tries to run away, but Grace catches him and asks why he is running. He tells her he wants to return to his home in the forest. She promises him that if he stays with her for the night, she will personally take him to the forest the next day. She explains that she loves the forest and was appointed to protect it and everything in it, including him. Pete asks if Elliot is included, and she asks him who Elliot is. Before he can answer, Jack calls out to them, and they go inside for dinner. Jack is happy they rescued Pete from the forest because no one knows how he got there or who he lived with. Meanwhile, in the forest, Gavin's workers urge him to return, as they have wandered too far and have been lost for some time. They circle around the river without finding anything until they finally discover Elliot's cave. They are astonished that a child could build such a home. They enter the cave and Elliot hides to avoid being seen. However, when Gavin grabs a book inside, Elliot becomes furious and starts attacking them. The workers are unable to see him. Elliot topples trees over them, and no one understands what is happening. He pulls a car and causes Gavin to fall from it. Gavin is terrified when he sees his weapon bent in a strange way, realizing the hidden creature is enormous and powerful. Elliot reveals himself to Gavin, who, out of fear, drops his weapon and quickly returns to the car. He and his team finally flee, but they don't realize that Elliot is flying after them to find out where his home is. Back at Grace's house, Pete is enjoying his time. Grace teaches him to brush his teeth and shows him new tools that sing, making him very happy. Elliot continues his journey and sneaks into a lumber warehouse. Meanwhile, Grace receives a call from the sheriff, who informs her that Pete's family died a long time ago, and that Pete himself was presumed dead because no one found him with his family's bodies. They assumed wolves had eaten him. The sheriff tells her that social services will come the next day to take Pete into care. Elliot is still searching hospitals for Pete, but no one believes the children who claim to have seen him. At this time, Pete is with Natalie, drawing a picture of Elliot. She asks if Elliot is imaginary because he looks like a dragon. Pete asks if she is imaginary, and she says no. He tells her that Elliot is just like her, real. Natalie explains that Elliot is his friend, similar to the story Sam once told them about a green dragon lost in the forest, who used to live in the north. Grace overhears them from the stairs and decides to talk to Pete. She asks Natalie to leave them alone for a while and begins to get to know Pete better. She tells him that her mother died when she was his age and asks if he remembers how he got to the forest. He says they were on an adventure, and that's all he can recall. He then met Elliot, and they lived together. When she asks who Elliot is, he shows her the picture he drew. She remembers her father's story about the green dragon and thinks this can't be a coincidence. Grace decides to take Pete to the forest the next day to investigate the dragon and understand how he survived all this time alone in the forest. Later, Gavin arrives at his brother's house and tells him that a dragon attacked them in the heart of the forest. Jack doesn't believe him and accuses him of making up a story just to justify going deeper into the forest. Gavin is upset and tells Jack he thought he could rely on him, then leaves in frustration. Grace overhears their conversation and starts to think Gavin might be telling the truth, especially since Elliot told her the same thing. She wonders how all these people could be lying. Meanwhile, Elliot spots Pete with Grace, looking happy, and decides to leave without him, thinking it's better for Pete to be with people like him. Grace goes to her father's house, searching for a drawing of the dragon. When her father sees her, he asks what she is looking for. She tells him about Pete's story, and he asks again what she needs. She requests a true story, not the ones he used to tell children. Sam begins to recount how, when he was young, he went hunting in the forest. Unfortunately, he ventured too far and ended up near the river. Suddenly, he felt something behind him. When he turned around, he saw a green dragon with orange eyes. He was about to pull out his weapon to kill it, but stopped when he saw the dragon sitting still. Out of fear, he held onto his weapon, and the two stared at each other until the dragon turned its head away. Not long after, he completely disappeared from sight, and since that day, he couldn't see him again. Grace tells the seller that he might have a chance to meet him again because of his home, and she apologizes to him for not believing him all those past years. The next morning, Pete wakes up to Grace's voice waking him up to go to the forest. She and Natalie prepare to go with him. Jack learns that she is going to the affairs office to hand over Pete, but of course, she is lying because she is heading to the forest. On the way, she passes by the office and is confused about whether to hand him over or return him to the land. She decides to leave and lets the waiting employee return to his home. On the way, Pete learns that a third person will join them who knows the goal well. It turns out to be Sam, Grace's son. Jack returns to work and finds out that the forest is in danger. However, he asks the workers why the tools are there and learns that they are going hunting, not cutting trees. Jack is surprised but doesn't pay much attention. When he enters his office, he receives a call from the affairs employee who informs him that Grace hasn't arrived yet, even though they had an appointment. Jack becomes more suspicious and thinks she might have gone to the forest as well. He decides to go check on them. Finally, Pete reaches the forest and runs ahead of them while they follow him. He reaches the cave and searches for the creature, which is hiding inside. They enter the cave. At the same time, Gavin and his team also arrive in the forest. The creature emerges alone, and they are told to stay calm for it to appear. Indeed, it shows itself, and everyone is shocked. But Pete reassures them. They approach it normally and everyone is happy, including the creature. However, no one notices Gavin, who is holding a tranquilizer gun. He shoots the creature in the neck. The creature becomes frightened and starts attacking them. They throw a net over it and capture it, but it manages to free itself and tries to fly away. However, shortly after it takes off, it falls again due to the effect of the tranquilizer. Pete sits crying beside it. Later, it is transported in a large truck belonging to Jack's wood storage. Pete thinks all of this is Grace's plan, and she cannot clear her name. Gavin is also upset with his brother for what he did because he wants to capture a free creature. When they arrive, they call the negotiator to come and see the creature and handle it. Gavin brags about what he did, claiming he will own the creature, which will bring him great wealth since everyone believes dragons are extinct. People would pay to see this living miracle. Everyone heads to the lab, but the workers are prevented from seeing it by Gavin and his guards. Pete asks Natalie to help him free the creature because he doesn't like anyone capturing it. She decides to help him. Outside, the negotiator arrives. Gavin describes the miracle he found, saying only he and his guards can handle it. The negotiator tells him to get to the point and open the door. However, Pete and Natalie are inside and have locked the door. When they break the door, they find nothing inside. The negotiator laughs at Gavin, asking if he brought him to see a new car. Jack insists on his brother's claim that there really was a dragon there. Everyone then goes out to search for it. Only Grace manages to spot it and realizes it's hiding. She informs Jack and asks for his help to make it escape. Meanwhile, the children are in the car, thinking about how to drive it to help the creature, which still can't fly. Grandpa Sam arrives offering to help them. Pete is initially worried about him, but learns that he is on their side and supports the creature. Sam gets in the car and starts driving it, breaking out of the storage in front of everyone. The negotiator finally sees the dragon and is astonished. Everyone chases after them in cars, but Grace throws Gavin's keys to slow him down. She gets into Jack's car, and a chase ensues on the road. Grandpa tells the creature to hold on tight since the chase seems long. The cars try to hit them, and due to the creature's weight, the car's brakes fail without anyone noticing. Gavin manages to get ahead of them and blocks the road with his car. He thinks Sam will stop, and he indeed tries to, but the brakes don't work. Sam honks at Gavin to move, but Gavin misinterprets it as recklessness. Unfortunately, the cars collide, and the vehicle carrying the creature flips over. The creature comes out and starts attacking the cars, breathing fire for the first time, destroying the bridge. Jack and Grace's car nearly falls off. Gavin tries to save them but cannot hold on, and the car falls. Pete begs the creature to save them, saying he needs them. The creature feels sorry for Pete and grabs the car, but the bridge collapses with everyone on it. They all fall, including the creature. After a while, the creature emerges, flying with them on its back. It lands on the ground, and Grace hugs her father in fear. Jack holds his crying daughter. Finally, Pete approaches the creature, which flies him back to the forest and disappears into the clouds, unreachable by anyone. They finally reach the forest, but the cave is destroyed. Pete tells the creature they need to find a new home because humans know the place. But the creature refuses and gestures for him to return to the humans and live with them. They say goodbye, but it's not their last farewell. Grace returns home with Jack and Natalie, saddened by Pete's departure. However, before entering, she is surprised to find Pete standing behind her. She is overjoyed, and everyone runs to hug him. They decide to live together. 6 months pass since the incident. Pete is enrolled in school and lives with Natalie's family, whose father marries Grace. Stories about the dragon completely disappear since no one has seen it since. Pete doesn't forget and goes to the forest with his new family. He finds a new place higher up and finally reunites with the creature, which has also reunited with its family. It turns out there are more dragons from its family, and it has returned to them after Pete returned to the humans. Everyone lives happily ever after. And that's where our film ends. See you in a new summary. Goodbye.